Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Steampunk Rally Fusion. This is a 2 to 8 player card drafting dice rolling racing game. This plays similar to its predecessor, Steampunk Rally, with a few additions that we'll go over during the components section of this video. In Steampunk Rally Fusion, you take the role of an inventor, building your own racing machine, trying to become the champion of the Steampunk Rally. How do you become champion of the Steampunk Rally and win the game? By being the furthest past the finish line at the end of the final round. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components, setup, and how gameplay works in Steampunk Rally Fusion. Now let's take a look at the components. You have double-sided track tiles. There are track features on these tiles that are referenced in your rulebook. Play direction tile. And then new in Steampunk Rally Fusion, you have event cards that you could use instead of the play direction tile. They have a direction on the back of the card, and then you will flip over and resolve an event during the upkeep phase if a player is in a tripod space, or if it's the first time they're in an artifact space. Next, you have the on-ramp tile. This is new in Steampunk Rally Fusion, and it is used for your first game to make the game go a little faster and to grasp the concepts a little easier. Next, your project cards. These are new for Steampunk Rally Fusion. This is for the advanced game, and these are long-term goals. During your race phase, you can play dice to the project cards that will advance your clip, and then you'll be able to cash it in at any point for the effects on the card based on where your clip is located. Next, we have boost cards, which are the cards with the black border. Machine part cards. These cards have a copper border, silver border, and gold border. The copper border cards have 4 connections and are easier to place. The silver give you more dice, and the gold give you more movements. Also on these cards, you'll notice a couple of new elements for Steampunk Rally Fusion. Overcharge. This gives you a strong immediate effect, but requires you to discard this part from your machine. Gear up cards. These have gears in a circle. You would place the gear amount in that circle, and then for as long as that part is a part of your machine, you will gain that effect. If you discard that part from your machine, you would gain those gears back to your supply. Player components. For the player components, you have your Inventor Cockpit and Machine Part cards, Inventor Standee, Player Aid, Light Bulb tokens, and Damage Gauge. Dice. The blue is your Steam dice, the red is your heat dice, the yellow is your electricity dice, and the purple and green are your fusion dice. The fusion dice have higher values and can be placed on any machine part for any dice, but when placed on the machine part, will remain there until that machine part is discarded. You cannot vent or discard fusion dice. Cog or gear tokens. Challenge tiles. These are used in the advanced game, and instead of the crowd challenge tiles being printed on the track, like in Steampunk Rally, you can actually have players place them on a chosen place on the track. And then finally we have your rulebook. Now let's take a look at the setup. We're going to be setting this up for a 3-player game which takes 10 steps. Step 1, create the racetrack. You are going to choose one of the 2 sides of the track tiles, and then you will select the start tile, 3 middle track tiles, 1 finish line tile, and the end tile. You will connect these track tiles and place the track in the center of the play area. Step 2, create the supply pools. You will create supply pools for the dice and cogs or gears within reach of all the players. Step 3, create the draw decks. You will sort the machine part cards and boost cards based on the color border, gold, silver, copper, and black. You will shuffle each stack and place them face down next to the track. Step 4, create the discard pile for each deck. You'll flip the top card of each deck and place it next to each deck. Step 5, determine draft direction. You can flip the play direction tile to determine the draft order, or if you choose to use the event deck, you would shuffle the event deck matching the track tile side you are using and place it near the play area. Step 6, choose an inventor. You would choose an inventor and get the corresponding standee. Step 7, create your machine. You will collect the machine part and cockpit corresponding to the inventor that you chose and place them in your player area. The names on these parts and cockpits should be in the top left corner and should make a complete valve connection. Step 8, get a damage gauge. You will get a damage gauge and set it to 0. Step 9, get a light bulb token. You will place a light bulb token color side up in your player area. Step 10, check space and optional additions. You will check the space in your player area, making sure to leave space in your player area for your dice pool, and then you will select any additions you would like to use. For secret projects, you would deal 2, and each player would choose one of those 2 cards to use and 1 to discard. If you choose to use the secret projects, you need to add a middle track for your racetrack. For crowds, you will go in reverse order from when people got inventors, and up to 3 players would choose spaces to place the crowd tokens. You cannot place them on any spaces that have challenges already. Now let's look at the gameplay. A game consists of a number of rounds until the final round is triggered when a player crosses the finish line. A round. A round consists of 5 phases: draft, vent, race, damage, and upkeep. Now let's look at each phase in detail. Phase 1, the draft phase. Each player will draw a card from each deck and then draft cards in 3 steps. Step 1, choose a card. Step 2, determine to sell the card, which is getting the top right resources. Attach the card, which are machine parts that would attach to their machine. Or stash the card, which are for boost cards. You would place it face down under your damage gauge. And then step 3, pass the cards you did not choose in the draft direction order. You would continue repeating this 3-step process until all 4 cards are used from each player's hand, or the completion of 4 drafts. Make sure when attaching machine part cards that they make a link through machine parts to your cockpit. Phase 2, the vent phase. You'll skip this in round 1. You will spend cogs or gears to reduce dice values. 1 cog or gear is equal to 2 pips. This can be 2 pips for 1 dice, or 1 pip on 2 different dice. If at any point you reduce a die number to 0, it is removed and returned to the general supply. This would open up a slot for you to place a new die. Keep in mind that fusion dice can never be vented. Phase 3, the race phase. Players will simultaneously activate machine parts. You will roll all the die in your dice pool, including any die stored in diagonal spots. Then you can do any or all of the following actions. Spend a cog to either re-roll a die or up the die value by 1. Use your light bulb token, flipping the token over to its dark side, and then starting with the cockpit and any card with the symbol, you would activate each card. And activate machine parts. You would activate the machine parts by placing 1 or more matching die on your die slots, determining the effect by dividing the number depicted. Keep in mind that this is only for dice added. It doesn't include dice that are already there. If there is a star on that machine part card on the die, then the number doesn't matter. During this time, you can place die on project cards. Each die placed would advance the clip up 1, and you can cash this project card in at any time for the effect on the card based on where your clip is located. When placing fusion dice, their numbers are 4 to 9, and can be placed on any color on the machine part cards. But keep in mind they can never be vented or discarded, so they will stay on that card until that machine part is discarded. Some machine parts have gear up abilities. You would place the number of gears or cogs on the card to gain that benefit each time that machine part is activated. If you discard this machine part at any point, you would gain those cogs or gears back to your supply. Some of the machine parts have overcharge, which give you a powerful effect, but the card is discarded off of your machine immediately. Then we move to phase 4, damage phase. You will lose parts if your damage gauge is below 0. You would lose 1 machine part for each number below 0 on your damage gauge. Then you would reset your damage gauge to 0. If you do not have enough parts to discard, you would explode. If you explode, you would discard all parts except your cockpit, reset your damage gauge, and go 1 space behind the last place player. And then we move to phase 5, upkeep phase. This is carried out in 4 steps. Step 1, score any unplayed die on the diagonal slots on your machine part cards. Step 2, flip the light bulb tile from the dark side to the light or on side. Step 3, return all unplaced die and any on secret project cards back to the general supply. Step 4, flip the draft tile over, or if you're playing with event cards, you would resolve event cards. For the artifact event cards, these are tied to artifact sections, so if a player reaches an artifact section for the first time, they would flip one of these cards over, place it next to that section, and resolve for all the players in that section. This card would stay there the whole game. If it's a tripod event card, any player on a tripod space would trigger a tripod event card to be resolved. You would flip the event card over, and any player on a tripod space would have to resolve the event. By flipping these cards and resolving events, you may end up with a new draft order. Then rounds would continue until a player crosses the finish line. This triggers the final round. So you finish the current round and have one last round. Then after that final round, the player that is furthest past the finish line is the best inventor and wins Steampunk Rally Fusion.